It is dawn on October 25, 1944, east of the island of Samar in the Philippines. A Japanese battleship fleet is bearing down on the American landing beaches at Leyte. The only thing in its path is a handful of escort carriers and destroyers that were never built to fight warships. The force heading toward them includes the Yamato, the largest battleship ever built. What the American crews did over the next 3 hours was not supposed to be possible. Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague commanded a unit known as Taffy 3. His escort carriers were slow, lightly armored, and carried short flight decks. They could make about 17 knots. Each had a single 5-inch gun on the stern, more of a gesture than a defense. His destroyers and destroyer escorts were small ships built for convoy screens, not fleet engagements. The unit's job was to guard the flank of the Leyte Gulf landings, while the heavy warships fought elsewhere. Those heavy warships were not coming. Admiral Halsey had taken the fast battleships north to chase a Japanese carrier force, leaving San Bernardino Strait uncovered. During the night, Vice Admiral Kurita's center force had pushed through the strait and turned south. He brought 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, and a screen of escorts. By dawn on the 25th, they were heading for the landing beaches. The only thing between them and the transports was Taffy 3. Sprague learned this when his lookouts reported pagoda masts on the horizon. Within minutes, shells began falling around his carriers, heavy caliber rounds that threw columns of water taller than the ships themselves. The Japanese were firing colored dye loads to help spot their salvos. The sea around Taffy 3 turned red, green, blue, and yellow with each bracket. He had 3 problems and about 5 minutes to solve them. His carriers could not outrun the Japanese fleet. His aircraft were armed for ground support, not for attacking warships. And every minute the enemy closed the range, his ships became easier targets. The transports behind him had no protection at all. His first order was to turn south, away from the enemy, and toward a rain squall that might give cover. His second was to make smoke, every ship laying the thickest screen it could. His third was to launch everything that could fly, regardless of armament. Within minutes, the thin flight decks were pushing aircraft into the air while shell splashes crept closer. Then he made the decision that defined the battle. He ordered his destroyers and destroyer escorts to attack the Japanese fleet. These were ships of roughly 2,000 tons being sent against battleships of 70,000. The small ships went in at flank speed. Commander Ernest Evans on the destroyer. Johnston did not wait for the full order. He drove out of the screen toward the cruiser line alone. He launched torpedoes at the heavy cruiser Kumano and blew her bow apart. Then he turned his 5-inch guns on the superstructure to cover the run. Japanese shells found Johnston within minutes, smashing her hull and knocking out her steering. 3 boiler rooms flooded, and she lost half her speed. Evans fought the ship back into the smoke on manual controls and brought her around for another run. The destroyers Howell and Heermann followed on separate attack runs, each driving toward the battleships and cruisers at full speed. They launched their torpedo spreads and then heeled over, laying smoke and hammering away with their 5-inch guns as they turned. Each time torpedoes hit the water, Japanese ships had to turn to avoid them. Each turn broke their formation, disrupted their fire control, and cost them time. Yamato turned so hard to dodge torpedoes that she sailed 10 miles away from the fight before she could come back around. Above the surface, Sprague's air plan was improvised and relentless. Avengers and Wildcats launched with whatever they carried. Torpedoes if available, bombs if not, depth charges when nothing else was left. Pilots made repeated runs on the cruisers, strafing bridges and gun mounts to force errors in enemy aim. Aircraft from the neighboring Taffy. 2 group joined the strikes and spread pressure across the Japanese column. When pilots ran out of ammunition, Some made dry passes to keep the enemy reacting. The cost was immediate and visible. The escort carrier Gambier Bay fell behind the formation. Heavy cruisers found her range and walked shells along her hull until she rolled and sank. She was the only American carrier lost to surface gunfire in the entire war. The destroyer escort Samuel B. Roberts charged the cruiser line with her few torpedoes and a pair of 5-inch guns. She fought until the damage was too great, then went under. Johnston, already crippled, came back out of the smoke to draw fire from the carriers. Evans kept her in the fight until she was dead in the water. She sank, and her captain went down with her. Through all of it, Sprague kept the formation moving south under smoke. The screen was so thick in places that his own ships lost sight of each other. His remaining carriers fired their stern guns at cruisers that broke through the haze. Pilots cycled on and off the flight decks, rearming on planks slick with spray. The rain squall gave brief cover, and when they came out, they made smoke again. Then the Japanese stopped. Around 0920, Kurita ordered his fleet to withdraw, and his ships turned north toward San Bernardino Strait. No one on Taffy 3 understood it immediately. Sprague later said he could not believe what he was seeing. From the Japanese side, the picture had become unreadable. Smoke, squalls, constant air attack, and torpedo alarms from every direction had made it impossible to hold a clear plot. Reports reaching Kurita described fleet carriers and heavy cruisers that did not exist. He believed he was fighting a much larger force. That confusion was not an accident. It was the cumulative result of everything Sprague had ordered. Smoke blinded rangefinders, torpedo attacks forced evasive turns, and airstrikes never stopped coming. His small ships moved faster than the Japanese could track them. None of it should have worked against 4 battleships and 6 heavy cruisers. Together, it did. In the water behind the screen, survivors of Johnston, Howell, Roberts, and Gambier Bay floated among debris and fuel oil. Some held onto rafts and nets for 2 days before rescue arrived. Sharks took men from the edges of the groups. The battle cost Taffy 3 2-destroyers, a destroyer escort, and an escort carrier. Several aircraft were lost, and over 1,000 men were killed. Later that morning, the carrier St. Lo was struck and sunk by a kamikaze, one of the first organized kamikaze attacks of the war. The withdrawal removed the direct threat to the Leyte landings. The beachhead survived, reinforcement continued, and the Philippines campaign moved forward. If Kurita's force had reached the transport area, it could have destroyed the supply ships that the entire ground operation depended on. The escort carriers and destroyers of Taffy 3 prevented that outcome at a cost their commanders had expected to be total. The fight off Samar showed what happens when a smaller force commits fully. It forced a stronger opponent to react instead of execute. Every minute Sprague bought with smoke, torpedoes, and air pressure was a minute the transports behind him did not burn. If you like real stories from the Second World War, like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The next one is coming.